Best BBC voice. Well, a very warm welcome to you. Welcome to episode 11 of My Body the Guitar with Karla Linn Merrifield. Great to see you, Karla.
Oh, great to see you, Paul. As always, I can't believe it's number 11. I mean, my goodness, how'd that happen?
I have no idea, but it's a pleasure. Today's subject, Karla.
Yeah, one podcast at a time. So, we're gonna do some messing around with Kieth Richards today. So I guess I don't know. Should I just plunge right in here?
Yes, why not?
All right, I will alert our audience. Not that I guess we need to do this in this day and age, but there's some gritty stuff going on in this particular poem, including what they refer to as an F-bomb. So just be listeners, be forewarned. I mean, Kieth Richards, Rolling Stones. This is sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Okay. Anyway, so the poem I'm going to share with you and our viewers is for Kieth Richards. It's called Abecedarian in Kieth's Unlikely C sharp minor key. So deconstructing just the title, Abecedarian is a form of poetry, as so many of the ones we've talked about are, and it's very simple. The only rule is that the beginning of each line has to start with a letter of the alphabet in the order of the alphabet. Okay, so this is a poem of 26 lines for the 26 letters in our alphabet in the Western world, and if you look down the left-hand margin, if you can read this out in YouTube land, you can see from the A to the Z along the edges of the left-hand margin. Anyway, so that's an abecedarian, and there are other. People are doing all kinds of interesting variations where they put the alphabet in the middle of the line. I mean, there's all kinds of crazy adaptations that you could do with it, but this is a standard. And Kieth, I swear, he told me that this is what he wanted, so this is what I gave him. And then his unlikely C sharp minor key. In his marvelous biography, this is what autobiography. This is probably of all the books I've read for this project. I think this was the most fun. He is so delightful. His company. I mean, and you can look at it's just like I had a blast reading it, and I think that's why in the poem I ended up just all right. I'm gonna channel that energy and be this, have as much fun as Kieth seems to have had in creating his music and living the life that he has led. So. 26 lines, deep breath, abecedarian in Kieth's unlikely C sharp minor key. A flash is threat, fire is sweeping, but you, Kieth, brother, a shot away, can never fade away, sliding up my imagination, double stringing me against the drone, each line of mine a fret, a kiss away from fuck stains, mad bull falling off the wagon, gritty, grinding, giddy guitar, playing me dirty as a poet's guitar. How minor here, suspended there, how ooh and da. It's you, finding the moves toward my lost chord nobody's found before, just in time. Kieth, me, your lonely little lady, a kiss away, mangling and a tangling, no properly to it. Oh, your Rossetti, your F. Hall Huffner Blue Boy, harmony, played properly, nah. Throwing flick back with Quaaludes, Sister Morphine, What You Want, another hit or two, rolling dangerously, Stones, cynical, nasty, skeptical, rude, titles of songs, anti-girl lyrics, anti-me and mine, but unlike Mick, you stretch yourself into other people's hearts, verily winging in from the ether, writing me open-tuned, wearing only your trademark 5 strings, my X-rated lonesome melancholy for your simplified sound. You, Kieth, from, of, me, Zoftic instrument, whom you've given plush shelter.
Well, I think that's an utter virtuoso poem, that Karla. That is unbelievable. I'm looking at it now. And I'm following it obviously while you're reading it, and it's just like, that is what wondrous. What an utter virtuo. That's an Eddie Van Halen virtuosic poem. That is so amazing.
Woo! High praise. It was so much fun. I mean, I just channeled him. It was so much fun to write, and it's one of those kind of poems. There are several like this where you don't really necessarily begin with the first line. I remember taking in my journal and writing A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, all the way through. Okay, there's my starting point for each line, and the first one. I wrote it kind of from the inside out in a way. The first letter that I got was Quaaludes, Sister Morphine, What You Want, another hit or two. Q is a hard letter to work with in one of these puppies. But through all that whole phase of his life, like so many other guitar gods of the rock and roll era, that whole bad drug scene and the thing, and then like so many, bless his heart, he got through all that and came out alive. Unlike some who didn't. And but it was just funny. And then of course I knew that the RS, which comes right together in the alphabet, had to be Rolling Stones. So it was one of those poems that I started kind of I would do a line and I'd think about it, and I was also trying to weave in as I was going, weave in lyrics from Give Me Shelter, which is probably my favorite Rolling Stones tune, and it's certainly one that makes for a great workout if you're dancing to it. So it just, I don't know. So I'm working with the alphabet, and then I'm trying to get the lyrics in there, and I'm trying to then obviously paint in a way my portrait of him and what he means to me. So it was a real hoot to play around with, and if I could ever find a way to get it to him, I think he'd get a real good chuckle out of it. That this is how it turned out.
Well, I totally agree, Karla. Sorry, I got a bit of a delay. If I'm probably talk over you, so what the one thing I really wanted to put across, actually, that flies out off the page for me, is that you've taken a beautiful structure and made something totally unique out of it. And that's exactly what the Rolling Stones did with the blues. They took the 12-bar blues and they made something totally beautiful and a work of art. And I think you've done the same thing here with this. I mean, I have to. How long did it take you to write?
Uh, um, the actual writing, I noodle it off and on during the day, probably about 2 weeks. I'd fall asleep thinking about what what's the the X. There's another one that's hard to work. What's the X line going to, how am I going to do the X line? Or I'd fall asleep. Okay, how do I get, where do I want to put the lyrics? And how do I work in who he is and how he plays and what he played and his whole gestalt. I mean, part of it is, I mean, I've got song lyrics woven in here, and I've also got direct quotes from the autobiography, just a few that I just stole. I mean, I give him credit at the back of the book, but he talks about songwriting at length and how he went about it, or how he still goes about it, and he mentioned something that stuck with me about how for him in writing a lyric, he was always listening for the vowel sounds and how to get those vowel sounds to repeat. So he's basically working with rhyme, but he specifically used the terminology, the vowel sound. So I had that very much, I was very conscious of that as I was writing it. And he goes, yeah, so there's all the vowel sounds that are happening and they start falling into place and you've got this groove going. And he goes, and then there's the ooh and the da, and I thought that was great. So I had to get, so that's in there. So there are a few little short snippets that are actually Kieth's words as I was rolling through this kind of crazy roller coaster of a poem.
In terms of the title, Karla, Kieth's Unlikely C-sharp minor key. I mean, just to let everyone know, C-sharp minor sounds like that. And there aren't many. It is very unlikely Rolling Stones to play in that kit. What gave you that idea? Because it's a beautiful observation.
Well, it's his. He speaks about that in terms of create. Okay, either the lyrics. There's the lyrics, and then there's the music that goes with the lyrics, and of course the weaving together of them. And he said he he was messing around as we do, and he's probably hearing something and he's trying to play, and he stumbled and he's this C-sharp minor chord, and he called it unlikely. He called it his. I mean, he claimed it as his unlikely chord, and he loved messing around with it and how to move into it and out of it with the tension and release of a song that you and I have talked about earlier today. And it was like, okay, C sharp minor, woo, what a key to play in. But that's so I borrowed it from his imagination, and it became for what I was trying to do with the poem. If you were going to play this, if these were lyrics or an aria or something, what key would it be in? And I wanted it in his key that he called unlikely. The silly stuff that goes through your head as you try to compose these things.
Could you talk
very
a bit
enchanting?
Could you possibly talk about all the songs in like up to about the J line, because it's just like there's so many quotes I can see there. It's so beautifully woven to. In fact, before you do, actually, I just want to make a aspect of weaving, because he mentions that in his book a lot, doesn't he? He weaves, especially with Ron Wood. He says they kind of weave parts together, and this is again. So you've taken like the blues, you know, like the Stones took the blues. You've taken a beautiful structure here, made it completely your own, and then woven this tapestry of just amazing quotes together. Could you just go up to about J, the line J, because I can see so many songs in there.
Oh, okay. Well, up to just the J line, he up to there. I had to set. I mean, this is early in the poem, fairly stage setting. I want the reader to get an ear. Oh my God, she's quoting "Give Me Shelter." So there's something, you know, I'm triggering the reader a little bit, and then describing, you know, a little bit about his actual style, double stringing me, and basically playing me, and then the lifestyle in those earlier years of their success. That's where the fuck stains, Mad Bull, fallen off the wagon. I mean, he, like so many, you know, women all over the place throwing themselves at him, all kinds of drugs available, and, you know, trying to not go over the deep end, and then falling off the wagon. And so kind of a setup, and then down to G, gritty. And this is their music, you know, gritty, grinding, giddy guitar. And that was one of his words, giddy. He referred to a couple of his earlier guitars as my giddies. And I had never heard that. I mean, I have referred to mine, and, you know, we hear, you know, my git, okay? And it's shorthand for guitar. But he actually used the word giddy, which I thought was just so cool. And then to put it into a line with that kind of, I mean, this is the G line, and that G gets ground into the reader's ear. Gritty, grinding, giddy guitar, playing me dirty as a poet's guitar. So here's that, now the transition into, I'm imagining his playing me as if I were a guitar. And you get all those marvelous, that guttural G sound going on in that line. And then some more of background in his music, how minor here, suspended there. I mean, how he would construct a song moving from a minor to a suspended chord, his ooh and ah, and then back to it's you. I mean, I've addressed him directly through the whole thing. And this is probably the most deep emotional line, I think, in the whole poem. It's you finding the moves toward my lost chord nobody's found before. And I actually believed, as I wrote this, because he talks about the lost chord that nobody's ever found, and he wants to find it. And I actually say, well, you found it because you found it in me, in this poem. So he's finding the moves toward my lost chord nobody's found before. So no other guitarist has done to me what he has done, just in time. Like he came, you know, whether it was back as a teenager when I first was dancing and listening to the Stones, you know, all the way up to the present era, because I still listen to them. Especially if I want a good workout in the evening and get some dance moves going. But it's like you came into my life at a great time, and you're still here, and you're here right now. As I'm learning the guitar, as I'm writing these poems, you found my lost chord so that this poem could happen.
Beautiful. I was just going to mention about the difference between major, minor, and suspended chords. You don't need to know anything about music theory, but this is a major chord. So this is Satisfaction. That's the first chord in Satisfaction. There he goes. But what he does is he kind of just puts his little finger on it and gets these little. He gets these little melodies going, and weaving is a perfect thing because he's weaving these beautiful things. And I think Keith Richards is a little bit like Frank Sinatra, or it's a bit like Elvis. Everybody thinks they can sing like Elvis, and everybody thinks they can. If they play guitar, they can play like Keith Richards. But I can quote directly from Joe Satriani, who's a Jedi Knight of the guitar. He's one of the most technically brilliant and fabulous musicians in the history of the universe, and he toured with Mick Jagger. And he said some of Keith Richards' parts, he said he just had to do his own thing because he couldn't replicate them. These are his words, because it's such an it's all about the feel was so unique about his playing. He generally plays kind of towards the neck, which is most players kind of play down here, but he kind of plays near the bridge, near the neck, and gets a kind of a softer sound. But the minor, so this is the minor. This is a minor chord. This is a major chord, and this is a suspended chord, which literally is suspends because it needs to come back down to earth. So all those things like in "Give Me Shelter," all this type of he's doing this all the time. There's the suspension, and there's the major chord. So that's one of the really interesting things. It is that really he's playing with the tension and release. So as it's Stones are brilliant at this. As the lyrics have tension and release, so does the music underneath. We don't really pick it up when we're listening to it. We can feel it, and that's the thing with the Stones, is that everything's kind of there, and it's a feel type of thing. And you quoted it so beautifully, Karla. Is that can never fade away on the and of course not fade away is one of their early hits. I'm gonna tell you how it's gonna be. You're gonna give your love to me, and so Buddy Holly again. And it's great that this follows on from the Robert Johnson one, because Robert Johnson was one of Keith Richards' idols. And not only that, I'll come to it later because you shouldn't be talking, it's not me. But
No. This is great.
He got the G tuning from Robert Johnson, which I'll come to in a bit. Actually, it comes in later in the poem. But people should know that Keith Richards, he's not he discovered this tuning from Robert Johnson. But we'll come to it later on, Karla. Let's go in the poem because there's so much to talk about. It's fantastic.
Okay, so I got, Keith, it was wonderful. I got to be able to use his, I knew that probably from the get-go without even writing it down, that, he would be the K of in the live. And it was a way to come back. I keep talking to him. It's you, but you, Keith, it's you, Keith, me, your lonely little lady, a kiss away, mangling and entangling, no properly to it. And that's one of his lines. He said, "Oh yeah, I'm just a mangling and entangling with, with his guitar." He said, "There's no properly to it." He gave himself such permission to just do to do the music, to make this music, to write these songs and perform them. It's just like, mangling and entangling, no properly to it. It's not like, oh yeah, you got to sit down and you've got to do your figure, your scales and work your way up the fretboard doing your triads and all that stuff. No properly to it. He just let himself go with his guitar, into his guitar. It came into him, and then there was the verbal component in terms of the lyrics. So Anyway, so that's a taste of, you know, how he operates. And then, you know, I give a little nod to just in this poem. I mean, I only mentioned 3 of his guitars. And, you know, like so many, he had many more, you know, Telecasters and Gibson. He had a beautiful Gibson Les Paul that he decorated himself. And here he is in the early days with a Fender Telecaster.
Mm.
And but I picked the 3, the 3 that to me seem to capture most tightly what he was playing, and what those particular instruments. I mean, if you were, you know, I mean, there'll be guitar freaks who will look at this poem and they'll get lost in this. Oh, a Rossetti. Oh, a Hofner. You know, oh, Harmony, and they'll pick that whole, you know, that whole part, that one line apart, digging into his guitar history, and what, you know, who made them and why he was playing them, and you know, because you know he would change guitars fairly frequently over the course of his career. I mean, he had, like them all, they had favorites. He tended to name his guitar. I don't even mention that he was always naming his guitar. So the Telecaster that I just put into the visual frame was called Macabre. You know, I mean, it's funny. I mean, the guy's got such a raucous sense of humor,
Yeah.
That tickled me no end, and it shows through. I think there's playfulness as serious. I mean, the Gimme Shelter is a fairly serious.
Yeah.
If you just read the lyrics, it's a serious lyric in terms of what it's saying about the modern world, and why this voice is begging for shelter with what's going on in the world, which is the starting point of the poem. A flash is threat, fire is sweeping, lines from the song. But you know, out of that, he just is like an imp, just full of mischief and wonder and prankster, and having fun and giving himself permission to do it. Which, you know, in the early days, you know, things got a little overboard in terms of Quaalude, sister morphine, and all that. But nobody like him. Just nobody like him.
No, and nobody can play like him, and it's not. Keith Richards seems to have. He doesn't really get mentioned very much when you talk about guitar players from the 70s. People say Clapton, Page, Beck, and he never really gets mentioned. However, he's one of the greatest songwriters of all time, I think. I mean, Mick Jagger, and the fact that they can take something as traditional as the blues. I go back to Satisfaction because, and the fact is, also is they were great students of the blues. You know, people they get quite a comical reputation because of the of their you know the partying and stuff, but in fact they're really serious blues musicians. And not only that, before I demonstrate Satisfaction, is the fact that with the Rolling Stones, but one of the architects of the blues revival, because they got the records from of Muddy Waters, Johnny Hooker, B.B. King, Robert Johnson, and then they kind of broadcast that all over the world. These are the people you need to listen to, you know. And so, I mean, B.B. King himself said he massive amount of popularity and exposure. And what a great thing to expose the world to such pure music, because the thing about the early blues music is it's the only thing I can think of. It's the earliest recorded music where people were not looking to really make a lot of money because there was no money to be made in those days. So when Robert Johnson made his records, he was making them because he wanted to express himself. You know, B.B. King, is they wanted to express how they feel. Bessie Smith, they wanted to express, and it's not really, there's not much showbiz about it. You know, it's not, with all respect to musicals, there's no kind of showbiz about it. It's kind of gritty, and it's, you know, and Keith Richards picked up on this, and I think that's what the torch he's carried all the time, because he's never really veered off from being Keith Richards, you know. In terms of his music is very consistently Keith Richards. He's not kind of had an 80s period when he's done a lot of synth pop. Nothing wrong with that. But the way he tunes his, well, Satisfaction first, because he'd famously keep a tape recorder by his bed to capture, you know, inspiration or snoring, or one of the two. But if we take a classic blues thing, that type of thing. Now, if I take the low string away, this is how I feel Satisfaction would have come around. We got to take this out. Put it in the context of swing in 60s. You know, and then the chords for Satisfaction again are based around the 12-bar blues. I can't get no satisfaction. It's the same chords as the 12-bar blues, so it's really interesting. But if I was to slow it down, it kind of, well, I can't get no satisfaction. Well, I can't get no girl reaction, 'cause I try and I try and I try and I try, I can't get no. So you've got that kind of swampy blues type of thing that really gets into the ingrained, and I think that blues edge, and plus the fact Mick Jagger, I mean, he's got an incredible, he's an incredible performer. He's a great singer, great communicator, you know, and he's not the naturally probably the greatest dancer in the world, but the whole thing kind of worked. And I just wanted to go touch on kind of also about the when you mentioned about the open tuning. Later on, because that's really interesting. I just demonstrate what happened. He got this from Robert Johnson. So the guitar, as I've got it now, is tuned normally to what we call an E minor tuning. That's what 90% of the guitars in the world are tuned to. But Keith Richards heard people like Robert Johnson, the early blues players, tuning the guitar differently. Now, why would you want to tune the guitar differently? Well, it's because in the early days, the guitars were very difficult to play. So if you could just, if I get one of these out, actually, it would make it a bit easier. There we go. Particularly if you've got a slide, a bottleneck, you want to play in a straight line. So what they would do is change the tuning on the guitar. So, for instance, the A, if any guitar plays, the A string would go down to a G, and the B string, the E string would come down to a D. Kind of. So what you've got is if in the Robert Johnson sense, you've got what we call a major chord in a straight line. To play a major chord in the normal tuning, I have to have my fingers on different frets. I have to do that. Whereas with this, it's that. So what we've got is we've got this tuning now. The reason why he plays a 5-string guitar, which I think you mentioned later on, is that in this tuning, the E string goes down to a D. So we've got the whole, it's really resonant. But when he's playing his rhythm guitar, this is too low when you're playing with a bass guitar. So the frequencies clash. You don't need it down there. Plus the fact he likes to play the guitar a lot, strum the guitar, the whole thing. And it's a pain. So he took the E string off the guitar. So this is why he plays 5-string guitar. is that it's too low.
That's right.
And with this tuning, so what he would do, he would put on what we call shapes, chord shapes on the guitar, in different. He would put them on the guitar, but they would sound different to regular tuning. Would you believe this shape I'm playing here is the first chord to Sultans of Swing? It's in this, in regular tune, this is a D minor, but in this, it's not. And this shape you can. And the beautiful thing about the Rolling Stones, one of the things, is that Keith Richards would play in this tuning, and then Ron Wood would play in the regular tuning that I had when I started off. So you've got the two tunings together there, and that's why that's what, when he's weaving, they're actually weaving essentially two different instruments because they're tuned and resonate so differently. So you really, and with the guitar, there is definitely probably the best sounds are the open strings. If you've got as many open strings as possible. It all rings. Jimmy Page, of course, had this type of tuning as well for some things. So when you're playing the slide, it's such a big sound, and that's one of the reasons he heard this on Robert Johnson, and I do believe Charlie Patton and some of those early blues players. And this tuning really changed the world because people played along thinking, how can he? What is he doing? I have no clue. And then he said, I'm using the G tuning. And then a lot of people went on to discover more. And then the knock-on effect from that is people like Joni Mitchell that invent tunings for every.
Oh God, yes. She's got 12 guitars on stage with her because they're all tuned differently.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know of any other guitarist who quite goes to the extent that she does in terms of changing tunings from song to song to song to song to song. I mean, she's just so virtuoso, but that's her turn is coming.
I think so. That's what Keith Richards did. Is not only did he change, is it beautiful music, but he really changed the way people play guitar because plus the fact, between him and Jimi Hendrix, are they probably the coolest people in the history of the world? I mean,
Yeah. And on top of it, Keith Richards is physically handicapped. He practically took off the end of his finger as a young man. So he's playing kind of like Django Reinhardt, and not quite as extreme. He's playing with a physical handicap. No matter. I mean, that wasn't going to stop him. I mean, I just find that when I'm fumbling around and I'm having a bad practice day, I try to remember, well, I got all my fingers all in for now. I got all my fingers and they're all in good shape. I mean, he's been handicapped through, almost the entirety of his career. And he proved that he wasn't handicapped. It didn't stop him from doing a damn thing.
It's interesting.
Anyway, I had to get that in because I just think it's astounding.
Well, Tori Iommi from Black Sabbath is the same with only he lost his two fingertips in an accident, and then he developed again. I mean, a phenomenal, along with Keith Richards. I mean, probably two of the probably greatest riff writers, if that's English, of all time. And I think it's kind of it brings up the music in people, I think. And Keith Richards, everything is the blues. I think he's never strayed from his blues, even when he does, he's done some reggae and stuff like that, which is fantastic. But it's still blues. I think he still brings the blues, combining Toots and the Maytals and stuff like that with some blues, and it everything. He's a blues man. I think he's if anything, if I could sum him up, he's a blues man. Regardless of where he was born, he kind of. Can I just ask you, Karla? Because
maybe
Oh,
Sure.
please. Oh no, it's just the delay on the thing. Please continue.
Oh no, I was just going to say, maybe it is that Robert Johnson got reincarnated as Keith Richards.
Well,
I'm just joshing, It's just, he just channels, not just Robert Johnson, but like, the whole blues, that's that gritty, grinding, giddy guitar business that, he helped, spread the word and give those guys and gals a life beyond their, not just the regionalism in the United States, and primarily the Black American music scene, that the blues grew out of, just incredible support for, and spreading the gospel of the blues to around the world. So maybe Keith Richards has got a bit of Robert Johnson actually in his own molecules or something. It's possible.
He's certainly got that great storytelling approach, hasn't he? Because, and it's also things like sympathy for the devil, a very provocative kind of song for the 69, I think, that came out. And I think in his book he talks about the fact
Yes.
that the MI5 used to kind of camp outside his house because the Stones were kind of a threat to the establishment. I think more so than the Stones were really
big time.
Yeah,
big time. Yeah.
And,
I mean, when you think about it, the whole British invasion, you got the Beatles, kind of, I mean, my parents, I can remember when the Beatles were on Ed Sullivan show, and my parents were like appalled. Oh, look at that long hair and stuff. And it's like the Beatles were nothing, honey, when the likes of the Rolling Stones blasted onto the scene. I mean, the gestalt of those two bands, for all their formidable talent, they're just so strikingly different. Rolling Stones, man, yeah.
I think it's, particularly with "Give Me Shelter," because that's a great tune, and the fact that I've forgotten the name, the singer on the end, the female singer on the end. But I mean, that's what they brought out. She performed as one of the greatest vocal performances of all time, I think, on the end of "Give Me Shelter." The singer at the end there, as I understand it, she kind of.
Oh my God, you're right.
Yeah, she's. I mean, that's. I mean,
I'd forgotten about that. Yeah.
I mean, that is, and apparently that was off. That was off the cuff. I mean, they were kind of in the studio, and they kind of, as I read, they kind of rang her up and said, "Can you come over and just sing over the end of this song?" And it kind of makes it, because it's a monumental performance and really pushes the song even. It's a great song anyway, but it's a song even further into the it's. I mean, I've heard many people cover that, and it's a real challenge to do it. I think it's one of the best versions was Fergie from the Black Eyed Peas. She sang it with Bono from U2, and I think Mick Jagger's on it as well. And that was, but it's a tough ask. I mean, the Stones. I think the Stones really make things sound very easy, but it's very intricate music. When you hear Satisfaction, there's lots of guitars in there. And the other thing I must say about Keith Richards is he was, as I understand it, the first person to record with a fuzz box on Satisfaction. Originally, that was going to be a brass line, the riff, but he had this Tone Master, I think it's called. Oh God, it's gone. I'll put it in the description. But he was the Satisfaction was the first, as I understand it. There'd been distorted guitars before, but that was the first fuzz box to be recorded. Changed the world on how many levels? I mean, and one of the aspects I think of at this point perfectly sums up, and with Keith Richards, is that I do a lot of guitar talks, as you know, and stuff like that, and talk about, and when it can be a room of up to 200 people, and I can see everybody. And as soon as I say the word Keith Richards, everybody smiles. and it's not out of derision. It's the fact that he's such a cool guy and he's such a great player, a great songwriter. I think, when you look at the Stones repertoire, it's up there with anybody. And this, I've got to ask you, Karla, because when you got to the Z line, what made you choose Zoftig?
Zoftig. Well, I've been imagining throughout this whole book, if my body were a guitar and these guys played it, okay? So I'm back to that overriding metaphor in the last line. So I'm his instrument. He's playing me. He starts playing me in this poem early on, and certainly is at the very end. So I'm not just his guitar, his instrument. I'm giving a physical description to my human body, which is being half Austrian, 50% peasant stock from Eastern Europe, on the Zoftic side. And that's how I imagined being for him in this poem. If he was going to pick me up and play me, I'm just, it's like being I guess Zoftic is kind of a Zoftic instrument is like being a dreadnought guitar, a lot of guitar to hold in your lap. Okay. And that's where, Zoftic is just it's a nice way of saying, it's a very beautiful way, I think, sonically, of saying, she's chubby. And, so that's what it alludes to. And I just now, I had not thought about that, but yeah, I'm basically describing myself as this guitar, this instrument that says basically a dreadnought size guitar that I'm asking him to hold in his lap and play. And in return for this Zoftic instrument that he's played me, in return he's giving me, he delivered the shelter, and not only did he give me shelter, he gave me plush shelter. It's so comfy and comforting to be with him in his music.
I think it's absolutely wondrous, Karla. The more I read this, because from I'm looking at it, and you start off with a flash is threatening, fire is sweeping, and then the last half of the last line, you've given plush shelter. You've kind of, the whole thing is it seems to be a circle. It's fabulous.
It's a survival story. If you want to look at it that way, we're with all this threat that the poem opens on, which exists in this particular song, "Give Me Shelter." For all that threat, you go through all this, or I go through this as the speaker of the poem, coming out unscathed and safe, and not only safe, but through his gift of playing guitar, writing music, singing for us, whatever. Through his gifts, he's given me the shelter, and it's lovely shelter.
Oh yeah.
For this old gal.
I just think with this, there's so many aspects of Keith Richards' life that, supposedly he had all his blood a total body blood transfusion. That's the lyric, that's the thing that people say, oh, he had all his blood taken out and put back in again. It's like, but I think, he's what, and he's all joking aside, he's in his 70s, I think, isn't he? And they're still touring, and I think at the end of the day,
yes.
Who knows who's there? Who knows how old he is? But at the end of the day, he's kind of doing what he loves, and still appeals to young kids. You know, young kids, young bands. When you see young bands, the Stones are still a role model for young bands, and they've been going
Sure.
since what, 61, I think they were formed. It's since 1961, and they're still as valid now, I feel, as that we, as they were then. They're still one of the cool bands after all that time. They've just kind of they just got they just evolved really beautifully. And it's still. I mean, Mick Jagger still covers what, 10K on a show and stuff like that, and they're still going, and they're still making. And then they made a blues album a couple of years ago, and they don't need the money, of course, but it's the love of it, and I think that's what comes across, and the fact that Keith Richards is one of the greatest ambassadors, along with Eric Clapton, for the blues. I would say those two. There's loads of them, but he's a real ambassador because,
Yeah.
again, when you hear him interviewed, he'll talk about Robert Johnson, he'll talk about Toots and the Maytals, he'll talk about Muddy Waters, but he doesn't really talk about himself very much. He's kind of part of that tradition, and the blues, part of being a bluesman, I think. Not that I'm a bluesman, but part of being a bluesman is that it's almost like a sort of a music. I kind of think of them as like sonic samurais, because they can melt people away with just like 3 or 4 notes, just like samurai could take you out with like one swing. 3 notes from Keith Richards, and you're sold. I think
Right.
I think that a sonic samurai. That's what I call him, because he gets you straight away, and there's no defense. You can't say, I'm really not going to like this, because 3 notes in, and it's like, oh, I love this song. It's amazing. This is a wondrous, as they all are, Carla. Every week I say the same thing, but it's just wondrous. This is an utter
Oh.
piece of virtuosic poetry. This for certain. Is there anything you'd like to add, Carla?
No, the only thing I was thinking of as you were speaking just now was, the young people coming up, over the last 20, say 30 years, kids starting to, oh, well, I want to play the guitar. I can't tell you how many guitar teachers I know. And so many of them, one of the first songs that young students learn is oh shoot, senior brain. Oh darn, I just lost it. Not satisfaction. Oh well, somewhere in there. So many teachers have. I have it in my notebook. I can't believe I can't remember this. It was one of the first, when I the first picked up the guitar almost 2 years ago. Somebody said, oh, well, you can play. Well, maybe it is, I can't get no satisfaction. Anyway, people start off playing the Rolling Stones when they start playing guitar. I've heard it again and again from the guitar teachers I know in my life. Oh yeah, you can start with this. It's easy chords, okay, that kind of thing. And it gives them something they can play almost from the get-go with like 3 chords or something like that. And it's like, yeah, Rolling Stones. No wonder their legacy still lives. We're people like you are teaching them what the Stones are about.
I think in connection with what you're saying there, Carla, those riffs are just differently. Satisfaction is that. Now, I have a theory about this, which is only my thoughts. It might not be true, but I think what happens is that sometimes, maybe it's the same with poetry, when you first pick the pen up, or you first pick an instrument up, you kind of go to things, you think, oh, what was that? And I think Smoke on the Water is the same thing. I don't think Richie Blackmore would have sat there for hours thinking, I've got that. Shall I put that one there? I think he would have just played it and thought, oh, what was that? And I think the Stones with the same thing with the Stones, a lot of those type of things, he would have just picked up a guitar and thought, oh, I'll record that. Let's do that. And I think it's kind of that freshness that you come in, you think, oh, that's amazing. what was that? You know, because if you're playing for, the more you play, the more you go into what you always play. But when you first pick up an instrument, maybe it's the same with a pen. It kind of takes you places that you haven't been before. I've found that before sometimes, that you go off, and then the more you play, the more the inspiration kind of moves away, and the more the muscle memory comes in. But that first bit of inspiration is really where maybe the magic happens, possibly.
Yes.
But
yeah, the inspiration.
I think so. I think he would have. I mean, he's consistently written great songs. And the thing about this is amazing to me is that obviously he's not possibly been 100%, healthy all the time with the substance. I mean, he would say that himself, but he still managed to play and like write great songs in whatever state he's been in, And when you talk about the lost chord, I think he knew them all, but he's probably forgotten it. That's why it's lost, I think. But he's kind of a force of nature, I think, really, because he just goes on and he just plays great music, And he could even at the age of what is he, 78 or something, which is not old now. 78 is the new 40 now. He could sit down with an acoustic guitar. He's done it on YouTube many times before, and just play an acoustic guitar, and you're transfixed. So I think he probably is Robert Johnson, actually reincarnated. But it's been brilliant.
Bless his heart. Long live Keith Richards.
Oh my God, what a legend. What a virtual. I really hope he gets to read this, because he would be totally touched by this beautiful tapestry of words, because it's talk about weaving words. That's perfect. Thank you so much, Karla. It's been an absolute pleasure as ever.
If you know where I can find him, let me know.
Apparently he lives in Chichester.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, everybody.
We'll look forward to the next one, Karla. Thank you so much.
You bet. Thanks. Take care. Stay safe.